he's going to rake in stats. That's no question. He already has raked in stats. So for me, it's kind of one of those discussions of, is it going to be sort of empty calorie stats, or are these going to continue to be meaningful stats like they were this last postseason? Today, we're going bigger picture, some conversations that I think we're known for and that we certainly enjoy. This is going to be big picture legacy talk. The concept here for you, the dear viewer and listener, is legacy ceilings. So basically, where are 11 different players that you and I picked beforehand that are current players? Where are they right now? We're not necessarily going to rank them since their careers are still in motion. But what would a title do for that player? And can they break into the top 20? Maybe for some of them, maybe they already are in the top 20 all time. We're going to be going through that discussion. And I wanted to give you, the dear listener and viewer, a picture of what does top 20 look like. So I put together a list of, I think it comes out to 23 retired players, all contained within the NBA top 75 list. These are all retired players, keep in mind. I know there are some on our list that you might have up in this top 20. But to list off some names, give you an idea of what top 20 looks like, kind of frame it in your mind, what that level of accomplishment looks like, where that line is that we're talking about that modern players have the potential to break into. Here's some top 20 names: MJ, Kobe, Kareem, Russell, Magic, Bird, Zeke, Olajuwon, Shaq, Duncan, Kuzi, Dr. J, Jerry West, Moses Malone, Wilt Chamberlain, Rick Barry, Elgin Baylor, Clyde Drexler, George Mikan, Kevin Garnett, Oscar Robertson, David Robinson, Dwayne Wade, and Bill Walton. So just to give you an idea of roughly around where that line is, that list in no particular order there, to give you a line. So Justin, let's kick it off. I'll throw it to you first with our first player on the list, and that is going to be LeBron James. I think we can surpass the top 20 talk. I think you and I both agree he's in the top 20. You probably have to be a big-time LeBron dissenter to start constructing an argument that he's not in the top 20. Let's assume for the sake of conversation that he is in the top 20. And let's focus on, what does another title do for LeBron's career, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it solidifies his legacy. I think based on ESPN, their odds have the Lakers actually in ninth to win the NBA championship. Now, it's astronomical odds, but I mean, in terms of ranking the entire league, apparently Vegas thinks they got like a decent shot. And I think that's a lot to do with LeBron. In terms of him winning another title, it's really tough to say. I think he has a lot of baggage. I think, you know how sports is, people hold grudges. He can win 10 more titles and people are going to hate him for the decisions. So it's just really difficult to really gauge when's the public going to put LeBron in that elite class and kind of forget about his past, for lack of a better term, sins of his NBA career. Because I think in a lot of hardcore basketball fans' mind, they hold that against him. So I would say if he wins another title, in my mind, I think he moves up the list, especially just due to the roster, his age, due to really tough competition. I don't think it's elite competition in terms of what we see in the Western Conference in the past. I don't think it's impossible for, if the Lakers have great chemistry, if things mold together with their new rookies, things breaking their way. I don't think that's insane to say. Like, I wouldn't put like the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Timberwolves so much ahead where it's impossible for the Lakers to beat these teams in a 7-game series if everything is equal. I would favor the other teams, but I wouldn't say it's impossible for the Lakers to take him out. So, bottom line, me rambling, I do think if LeBron does win another title, it moves him up. But I think there's just so much baggage against him and to the next person that we'll discuss that it's hard for him to really move up, in my opinion, for a lot of basketball minds.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, another title would be huge, and in my mind, very unexpected given his age. And I
Yeah.
think, in my opinion, somewhat mismanaged Lakers team. Um, I think here's a couple things I'll say about another title for LeBron, real quick, and then we'll move on. This places him ahead of his generational rival, Steph Curry, in terms of the title count. They're both at 4 right now. Interestingly enough, this would put him in the lead in that. It would be, of course, a 5th title for him. For me, it doesn't put him in front of MJ. It doesn't put him in front of Kobe. It doesn't put him in front of Kareem. It probably, I think there's an interesting discussion when you look at primes and accomplishment with Larry Bird versus LeBron James. That's a conversation about peaking, obviously not longevity with what happened to Larry Bird at the end of his career. But I think another title, probably for most people, I think most modern fans probably have him ahead of Bird anyway. I think another title puts him squarely in front of Bird. And I think that's kind of the more interesting element of what another title would do to him is gives him that one up over Curry, unless rumors are true and Curry and LeBron do team up. This, of course, I'm kidding there. Seems a little outlandish. Let's move into our second player. You guys, for each of these, remember, we'd love to know your reactions. If LeBron won another title, let us know. What does that do for you? What does that gain in terms of your opinion individually of LeBron? The next person on our list is Kevin Durant. I'll go ahead and take the lead on this one, Justin, and then you can react and lead us into our next one. This would be a Phoenix Suns title. I think that's exciting that the Phoenix Suns are a team that, got really close, obviously, with Charles Barkley, got fairly close with Steve Nash and the 7-second Suns, and KD would have gotten him that franchise over the hump. It gives him a little separation from that Warriors infrastructure, which is largely part of the argument against KD is, well, yeah, he got it done when he had this sweet infrastructure and system set up for him to walk into. Obviously, like you mentioned with the decision with LeBron, the decision with KD to join the team that beat him when he was still on the Thunder that previous season is a pretty big scar to deal with in terms of his legacy. Many people have KD in the top 20. I'd have to really dive and see if he crosses into that threshold. It seems like he's probably there, even if you take a really negative spin on him joining the Warriors. I think at large, beyond my opinion, I think the top 10 discussions would begin if KD wins a title here in Phoenix. Took a little long there, Justin. Please give us your thoughts on KD winning another title and where that puts him.
Yeah, I concur with that. But you know how biases really matter on this list? I think there's two questions: what you and I think, and what
Sure.
the general media and basketball fans think. And I think, especially with KD, he has a ton of baggage. And to me, him winning another title, is that going to be kind of like discounted just in terms of the players around him? It kind of helps him and hurts him, right? Like you take a look if they can get Bradley Beal and Devin Booker to play with him. If he wins another title, what are people going to say? Well, he had tons of help, right? But if he doesn't win a
Super
title, it's
team
like, hey,
framework.
super
Yeah.
team framework, and it's just like, hey, this guy had a super team framework in Golden State. This guy had a golden super team framework in Brooklyn, didn't work out. Like he had a super team framework in Oklahoma City, even though they were younger. Somebody can make the case somewhat. So that's always going to be baggage for him, even though he's incredibly efficient. Um, I think in terms of the championship and him being ranked in that top 10, I think it goes to just his health. I mean, he suffered a devastating injury. He has recovered, and I don't think I've seen any drop off. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, he just broke the U.S. Men's Olympic scoring record. So if we're putting Olympics in this, I think that's going to be a factor in terms of where you rank him within the top 10 as well. So I would say if he wins another title, in my mind, I think you have to putting him in that discussion because just the way he plays, he's just so efficient. He's going to break all kinds of records. And if he does have the longevity as LeBron, which I wouldn't see as being impossible, I don't know where I could be talking out of my, out of my rear end right now, but I wonder if he has a shot at breaking LeBron's record. He's so efficient with just scoring. And I
Hmm.
realize LeBron's played more steady seasons, have less, massive injuries, but the way KD plays, he's just maximum efficiency. So I'm curious with all his stats, just by default, he just kind of you can't deny him. So yeah, I just in my mind, I would put him in that top 10 discussion. But I think at the same time, I think in terms of the main basketball conversation, there's a lot of just scarlet letters that are on his resume.
Gotcha. Go ahead, lead us in with number 3 on our list here.
Yeah, incredibly biased. Steph Curry, one of my favorite players in the league. So to me, him winning a championship, I think, oh man, I mean, it would be incredible for his legacy considering he lost Clay Thompson.
Yeah,
So it's,
considering the diminished state of
yeah,
that team, that's a great point.
yeah. I mean, you can argue that him to say they win the title this year, that kind of equals two of LeBron's.
Mm,
I mean, that's to be an incredible feat. Even if the Warriors encounter teams, let's just say Anthony Edwards gets hurt, Jokic gets hurt. Let's just say they have an incredible run. And they really just have to face, I don't know, the Celtics or one prime series, but the rest of the teams, they have devastating injuries for whatever reason. I still think that's just a massive accomplishment just due to just the Warriors are fairly shaky. Draymond is obviously past his prime. I just think that would just be incredible. Now, if Steph Curry leaves, and you mentioned that scenario, and I disagree with you in terms of Steph and LeBron. I think of Klay Thompson leaving, I think it's probable. I don't know
mm.
where. I don't know if he goes to LA. I don't know what their contracts are, but I wouldn't rule it out. Them playing together. Like I could see that happening, just considering where they are in both of their careers. This they liked playing together on Team USA. You know what happens when players play on the Olympic team, what can happen afterwards. So, I mean, I wouldn't rule it out, and I think it'll be very interesting if they become teammates. They both win a championship, like made their teammates. So I think that those are different wrench into the whole top 10 argument there. And it's in terms of, panning into that. And I think we have to talk about intangibles too. I just think we mentioned on our just when we interviewed each other, just Steph Curry just has a everyman quality to him and just has I don't know, compared to other athletes, I think he's a lot more powerful and a lot more friendlier to your basketball and sports consumer. That I think winning another title, it will be more celebrated. I think compared to LeBron and compared to KD. But where do you stand on this, Matt? Because it would be like you said, pretty improbable. It would be pulling off the impossible if he does that. So, especially
Yeah,
at Golden State.
a lot of good points there, and you're absolutely right. I mean, he certainly has a higher Q score than either of those players. He might even, at one point, Klay Thompson was the NBA leader in Q score, which is like kind of public approval rating. We had kind of unfortunately grumpy Klay Thompson last year, and
Yeah.
a lot of it was justified, and we didn't like seeing Klay frustrated,
No.
certainly. But point being, Curry may have passed Klay in terms of likability now. Solidly. I'll flip this on the other side, which is, I mentioned LeBron in the generational race. A title for Curry obviously puts him in the lead in the generational race for acquiring titles. He's already ahead in terms of head to head versus LeBron.
Yeah.
So it brings up some interesting topics there. I think individually as a player, most people recognize and still would feel that LeBron is a higher ranked player than Steph Curry. I think it's fair when you consider both sides of the ball to talk about that. And that is a ding against Curry in terms of the all-time rankings type of list, at least for me. But another title it's undeniable. I mean, he may be squarely in the top 20 for most people, and especially for modern basketball fans. I think without a doubt he's in the top 20 if he's a major force that wins them another title, and especially with the context of this title, which, like you mentioned, the context of other titles. I think the context of each title is important to look at, and something that improbable happening. I mean, even at this point, if they were to get Lauri Markkanen, who they were coveting, it still would seem pretty improbable to me that this Warrior squad in this deep West would compete for a title. Like, I don't think Markkanen is enough to get them there right now, even if they don't lose anything. And they would lose something to get Markkanen. You're not going to get him for free.
Agreed.
So I think it does a lot for Curry. I'm with you there. Next, number 4, one of my favorite modern players, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'll go ahead and lead with this one. He's won a title in Milwaukee. 2 titles in Milwaukee would be super impressive. Again, context, franchise history, smaller market. Kareem got a title in there with Oscar Robertson back in 71. Giannis, you would have something on his resume there where you could say he did something that Kareem didn't do in that sense. And again, that's not a slight on Kareem. It's just an impressive resume item for Giannis. And I think it would be one of those titles, and we're going to talk about someone else who has a title like this, but a title with a lot of weight, because I think in public perception, and I'll be honest, in my perception too, even though that team that won the title had a great roster, it didn't have that super team type of feel to it. It felt like it was more organically developed with how long Giannis had been there, and then those players that came in around him as well. So I think there's a lot of weight to 2 titles in Milwaukee. Individually, with the accolades he's already gotten, with Defensive Player of the Year, with multiple MVPs, he's probably already crossed that threshold into top 20 territory. I think it's fair to talk about it, especially if, let's say, he has another 6 good years in him, good-ish years in him. He'll have a lot of stats. He'll have a lot of accomplishments at that point. Pretty safe to put him in the top 20 if he wins another title in Milwaukee for me. Give me your thoughts on Giannis.
I agree. Take a look at this. Points, he's 71 all time. Rebounds, he's 83 all time. Assists, he's 141 all time. Blocks, 106 all time. And steals, 238 all times. And this is year 11. So to me, if he wins another title, and you mentioned those other accolades, it's pretty impossible to deny him at this point. Really, I think the question is, with injuries, with a lot of these big men, right? Like, that is the Achilles heel, no pun intended, is they stay healthy, they're a dominant force, and really no one can stop them. If they get hurt, that's where there's massive question marks. So to me, him winning another title, yeah. I think I'm looking back at my list. I think it makes it very, very interesting, because I think you take a look at like the elite big men on the top 10 list, particularly, and that's where I think Giannis would. I think you really have to consider him. Not only top 20, but top 10. I mean, but right now, you got to take a look at Shaq. You're not close to him yet. Tim Duncan, not close to him yet. Like Bill Russell, Kareem. I mean, those are kind of the top tier players. But, him winning another title, I think it puts him in that point to where he can catch them. So I agree with you. But at the same time, I'm wondering if he does leave Milwaukee, which is, I think, highly probable. And,
fair point.
I just don't see him going to, I don't know, play for the Pistons, a team where he's the only superstar. Like, he's going to be playing with some other complement of an all-star superstar talent. And I realize that he has that right now with Dame, but it's different when he got drafted to Milwaukee compared to going somewhere else. So I'm just wondering if he does get traded or signed somewhere with free agency down the line. Is he considered? How's that work? Because to me, he already won his title for Milwaukee. So
in terms of like what the perception is,
the perception,
the public,
exactly.
Gotcha.
Like, is he considered like a sellout? But players just bounce from teams all the time. So yeah, I think him winning another title in Milwaukee would really solidify his legacy. I mean, you see how much that title for Dirk means for him,
Yeah,
as opposed to if he just, I don't know, he played for the Heat or something. Like, I think,
great example. Yeah.
yeah, the weight of the titles do matter in this conversation. So if he wins another one, I think it does propel him. I think he's already top 20 anyways, but I think we're talking top 10 if he wins the title in Milwaukee for sure.
Yeah, and I think given the struggles of late, it's unfortunate because it's kind of like the opportunity has been completely stunted by injuries the last 2 seasons that have just happened in the postseason for Giannis. It's like he hasn't been able to get to that finish line really since the Bucks won their title, which wasn't that long ago. But it's interesting. I mean, frustrations boil over
Yeah,
quickly in the NBA, and you're right. It's not improbable. Every team would want Giannis if they
yeah,
could
of
get him,
course.
and it's not improbable that he he gets to that point where he feels like it's time to go. Hopefully, that's not the case. Justin, I'll have you lead us in with our number 5.
Honestly, he's one of the most fascinating players on this list. And I think not only talking about top 20, but I think when his career's said and done, I think it's up to him. He might be the greatest player of all time when it's all said and done. And that's
Wow.
Nikola Jokic. I mean, you just think he has titles, he's efficient. He's not exerting tons of energy compared to the other big men on our list. I mean, you take a look at he wins another title in a relatively smaller market here in Denver. I mean, I think I was wrong. I felt like just with the core that they had last year, that they'd be able to be a contender. Clearly, that was incorrect. I think they clearly need more pieces. I don't know if Russell Westbrook's the answer. I don't think so. But nevertheless, I do think they need more ammo around Jamal Murray and Jokic. And if he does win another title here, even within the next 3 years, I mean, just the way the dude plays, he's just going to accumulate all these stats. I mean, and if he does get the titles, I mean, it's very hard to deny him. It's just tough because I do think there is a bias against foreign players who are not exciting.
Mm.
And I think even with Giannis, who I think has a great personality, I think he slept on most of the season, which I don't understand because he has I think, a fantastic personality, fantastic story, and people don't talk about him. And I don't know if it's the smaller market. I don't know if it's because they're not American born, um, or North American born in particularly.
A little bit of both, I would guess.
Yeah. So, but God, if he wins another title and
In
man,
Denver.
and Denver, yeah, and just think if he wins like 2 or 3 of them in Denver and stays here, and he just keeps playing, I think the only enemy of Jokic is him. Like, I honestly, I could see him kind of pulling a Barry Sanders and retiring for the next
Yeah.
like 5 years. I want to be on my horses. I want my title. See you later. Like, I really think, I don't think he has the longevity. I think that's going to hurt him because I just don't think basketball is his main passion. He likes horses and he likes doing other things. Like, you're gonna see, it's kind of like, it's a weird comparison, but like with the Diaz brothers in the UFC, right? Like, you talk to them about anything else, about marijuana. They love cross country. They love fitness. Their personalities are different compared to when they're talking to them about fighting. And I feel like it's the same thing with Jokic. Like, you talk to him about basketball, his personality is different when you talk to him about horses or something else. So I think the bottom line is that if he sticks to playing, he's got a shot. I mean, I don't think that's insane to say in terms of just. I've seen the guy play in person. You have too. Like,
Right.
he just has intangibles that's going to make him. He is in a LeBron spear in terms of the chance of him being injured compared to other players is less likely just because of his game. And it's the way he can accumulate stats. I think, he's in that. He could be in that top 10 discussion if he just gets the hardware and just his longevity. But again, if he bails, I think that's going to hurt him. But am I outlandish in thinking that? Because I think the potential's there for him.
Yeah, I think you're spot on actually. I think it would be an interesting conversation. Is he a top 20 for what he's already accomplished now?
Sure.
Like if he decided it would be a disaster in Denver, but
Yeah,
if he decided
of course.
today I'm retiring, uh he has done so much with the individual accolades as well as getting it done in Denver. with honestly like a roster that's built pretty well. But in fairness, no all-star teammates there with him. He's done a lot with a little around him, relatively speaking, to other title teams you see. He's not on the Boston Celtics team that won the title last year. No shot at anyone there. But it's the reality. I've heard a good comparison that Jokic is the offensive equivalent of Hakeem Olajuwon, because when you look at what Hakeem did in those rosters that he won his 2 titles with in the 90s, it was very much until Drexler got there at the trade deadline, the second go around, it was very much Olajuwon versus the world, and Olajuwon carrying that. And that was a big story of his career in Houston. Jokic is kind of doing that in Denver. In my opinion, we'll talk about this a lot in the preseason, but Denver has taken a big step back. So a title this year, in my opinion, is going to be even more impressive than the first one he won. If he can do it again, I mean, he may very well already be top 20. He'd be solidified top 20. We're maybe talking top 10 if he gets another title done in Denver. And you're right. He has, of modern players right now, LeBron is kind of set. KD kind of maybe set. It seems like he has a bigger, maybe the biggest ceiling of anyone on this list, depending on what happens in these next 3 to 4 years.
A quick break from In the Lab to request a favor. If you love the chats with Matt and I, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and like this video. Also, by doing that, you get all of our back interviews featuring commentators from the WNBA and the NBA, our interviews with PA announcers, and our interviews with journalists from SB Nation, NBC Sports, and The Athletic, and a lot more. Again, please subscribe. Thanks, and now back to In the Lab.
Another player with a big ceiling, just to keep going here.
Sure.
Luka Dončić got to the finals last year, as you all probably know. A title is a great first step for him. I think people expect multiple titles out of Luka Dončić just from what they've seen, how he amazes, how he wows, how he fills up the stat sheet, similar to Jokic in some ways. But for top 20, you'd want to see multiple titles. I think you would expect multiple titles from Luka. He's going to rake in stats. That's no question. He already has raked in stats. So for me, it's kind of one of those discussions of, is it going to be sort of empty calorie stats, or are these going to continue to be meaningful stats like they were this last postseason? I mean, commend Luka for the run that he had. Can he get back there? Can he punch it through and pick up that coveted Larry O'Brien trophy? Justin, give me your thoughts on Luka.
Yeah, real quick, I agree. I think the strikes against him is his defensive liabilities.
Yeah.
That really hurts him. And I just think his shape, I mean, it's kind of on a different level, but people hold that against you. Look at James Harden, look at what's happening with Zion. And I think with Luka, going through the entire season and seeing him run out of gas, that's going to really hurt him. I think, like you said, it was really great first step, especially facing a Celtics team, and they even got Kristaps Porzingis back. So at one point, the Celtics were, at full strength. So that's a pretty hard task, especially taking a look at the Mavericks. So overall, especially if he wins a title with Dallas, I think that's very similar to almost the Steph situation. I mean, granted, he has Kyrie Irving, but I think that team, to me, way overachieved, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
So in my mind, if he does win a title as the roster is currently constructed, yeah, I think he, gets his name mentioned in that top 20 discussion for sure.
Definitely. Go ahead, continue right on to the next person on our list.
Yeah, I feel the opposite of this person here, Anthony Edwards. I did not understand the hype with him last year, and comparisons to Michael, I just thought were insane. I was just like, that is very lofty comparisons when you're to me, when you're comparing players to the greatest ever, and for him to have that performance, I just think there's such a long way to go. If he does win a title, I think that shows his maturity, and it kind of depends on how they win the title. Because again, he has Cat. In my mind, if the Timberwolves win the championship, Anthony Edwards is going to be the catalyst to bring him there. I just don't think that Cat's going to be the main superstar on that team. It's going to be Anthony Edwards. So if he does win the championship so early in his career, I still need to see a lot from him. I just think sometimes his ego gets the best of him just based on his comments he made about like the 90s era of basketball. I think that shows his arrogance. And especially when you get into the playoffs, I saw him crack and wilt under the pressure.
Right.
And when it's playoff time, and especially when you're facing like other elite basketball players, like it's just different. The playoffs are totally different than just a regular season in which, you hit a buzzer beater. Yeah, you rip the hearts out of a team for one night on a regular season game. But when it's playoff season and when you're doing it, series after series after series, that's a next tier. And until he can prove to do that, he can't be top 20, even if he wins a championship. So I think a long ways to go for Anthony Edwards, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're in agreement here, especially the disappointment and kind of the breakdown when it really was on him
Yeah.
to carry that. The comparisons to Michael. I mean, let's see you be Kobe first. Let's see
Yeah.
you be some of the other greats we've seen to get it done in crunch time. Granted, as you mentioned, I mean, he is young. He's got some time to figure this out and can elevate. Maybe this was the roadblock this year to motivate him. I'll add to this because we're on the same page here. And I don't know if he will become a top 20 all time. I mean, we're still at the phase where is this a flash in the pan where he has this awesome, incredible athletic ability, these major highlights, or is this going to be every single year we're in that hunt for the title? What I'll add to this is there would be huge weight in getting a title in Minnesota. I think that would be a big part of the story. And if he's the one to lead them through, get that finals MVP,
Sure.
that's a pretty nice title to have on a resume.
It is.
It's not getting you locked into the top 20. You'd have to see a lot of other good things around it to get there. But that would be a big deal. But we're in agreement on Anthony Edwards. We still want to see a lot more. And I'm someone who spoke very highly of him in terms of our top 10 current players list. Yeah. But we got to see those results pan out. Hopefully we do soon. I'll go right into the 8th player on our list, one that I'm very bullish of overall. I know I'm pretty sure you are too, Justin. That's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, SGA. Right now, OKC, I think, are the presumptive favorites in the Western Conference. There's a chance here, and it needs to be said, that SGA, with this young, talented core of players, can get something done that KD didn't do, that Westbrook didn't do, that Harden didn't do, winning a title in OKC. Very different teams, of course, but oddly similar in some ways. SGA is kind of the KD of this team. Can he get it through and get that title done? It's way too early to tell in terms of top 20. I mean, we need to see longevity if the stat production that he has right now continues. Another thing I'll say, since I can't really say with confidence he'll be a top 20 all-timer, what I will say is he's going to be my pick for MVP this next season, or my prediction anyway, coming in. He was a candidate. I think he was kind of like 3rd, 4th, 5th, depending on where you were with that OKC Thunder team last season and how they overperformed. So he will be in that conversation. I wouldn't be surprised if he snags an MVP this year, because everyone knows how deep the Western Conference is, and the Nuggets are going to take a step back. Even if Jokic is a beast, I don't know that I see him getting yet another MVP. So they're my thoughts on SGA. Justin, please give me yours.
Yeah, not much to add there. With SGA, he's only 26. And his career accolades have been recent in terms of being a 2-time NBA All-Star, 2-time NBA All-NBA team. So his rise is fairly recent. And I think what's going to be interesting to see, I'll say this and we can move on, is before I think the Thunder were under the radar somewhat and the pressure wasn't necessarily on him. Like you mentioned, I would say the Thunder are the presumptive favorites to, win the Western Conference. Is different. So how's he going to handle that with just a lot of the league's eyes on him, being people gunning for him. I think it's different when you're kind of sneaking up on people. But when you're the favorite and when a lot of the scrutiny is going to fall on him, what if they go on a 5-game losing streak, 10-game losing streak? What if they're struggling in the first round? All these things that you have to be a leader and be accountable for. How does he handle that? So that's where I am looking for in terms of that top 20, discussion in terms of handling that pressure, handling adversity, handling him being in a slump. That's where I think champions are made. It sounds corny, but I mean, it's easy to marvel at Steph Curry shooting 9 for 9 for 3. But what happens when the shot's not falling and he still finds a way to score 18 to 21 points when he's shooting terribly? I mean, that shows a real champion. That goes for LeBron, Jordan, the others on our list. So I think for SGA, seeing him overcome adversity with this team is what I am looking for on this upcoming season.
He definitely shined at the end of the Dallas series in spite of the team
Yeah,
not being able to get it done.
sure.
It didn't really feel like that was on him. He was making big shots to keep them in those
He
games.
was.
It just, to your point, wasn't enough. Go ahead, lead us right into our next player if you're ready.
Yeah, this player I have like mixed emotions about.
Me too.
So with Jason Tatum, he was drafted in 2017 and he was voted to the All NBA rookie team in the 2018 season. But the problem is that you take a look at his recent rise. He's a 5-time All Star. That was 2020 and 2024. Won a title in 2024. And I think you take a look at the Celtics. It's very, I think, maybe unfair to say, but I think the shadow of Jaylen Brown is casted on him, vice versa, with both these guys. And I really think to put him in that top 20 discussion, he's going to have two things are going to have to happen. One, he's going to have to just be spectacular in winning the MVP, like hands down, just be the undisputed MVP choice. Two, he's going to have to win a title without Brown at his side. With that, whatever one of them gets traded, one of them gets hurt, something happens, they're going to have to split for him to be really considered in that conversation. I just think they're so similar and they're so linked together that I think it's just really hard just to put it when there's other elite players in the league where he hasn't been able to really create that separation. I just don't think, even when he does win the title again, that it's hard for me to put him in that top 20 discussion unless they just end up having a dynasty or they win 4 or 5 titles in a row, or we have a Spurs type of dynasty there. Until that happens, I feel very hesitant to put him in that top 20 unless we see him really blow some minds away here, in my opinion.
Great points. And you're right about kind of the shadows. It's like they're casting two shadows over each other. Like it does not feel. I think there's a sense the narrative is trying to be like, well, Tatum is the alpha and the leader, and Jaylen Brown is, the Pippin, if you will.
Sure.
But it hasn't played out that way. Both are spectacular in different moments. Obviously, Jordan and Pippen were spectacular too, but it's just expressed a little differently with this duo. And I don't know, it is muddled in terms of multiple titles. Like if this core wins 3 titles, it's a great core. It's hard to pin that on Tatum. I'll tell you what makes it harder. You and I have talked about the playoffs being a little bit lackluster overall this last time around. Part of that is there were not really any big moments where it felt to me like, oh my God, Tatum hit that shot. Tatum hit that dagger. They didn't really need it because they're winning games by 15 plus points in a lot of cases. And it's hard for you to have your photograph moment like that when you don't get that close compressed. Oddly enough, that could be a sign of greater dominance. But in my mind, like thinking back to the playoffs, there's no one particular moment. I mean, I remember in the finals, like Derek White's teeth. Is what I think about when I think about an image that carried over. I remember Luka limping. I remember Derek White's teeth.
Sure.
But the Celtics kind of dominating and taking care of business overall, and not really a signature moment for really Brown or Tatum when I think about it just off the top of my head. And I'm sure there's great highlights I can go back and find. But in spite of watching the series, that's kind of what I'm left with. And that's kind of how I feel about Tatum in general, big picture. A big moment he had in the playoffs that I remember distinctly was dunking on LeBron when he was young. I think it was in year maybe 3, maybe year 4, maybe it was even his sophomore year. I can't quite remember, but he had a play where he dunked on LeBron. It was a big deal. It was a big, like, hey, I'm here type of moment. I can't remember many moments like that outside of that from Jason Tatum, in spite of winning the title and the great success that he's had, and in many cases, the great numbers he's put up.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It stinks because I really like him as a player, but
Yeah,
yeah, I think that separation I think is necessary when you're dealing with like the top 20 players of all time for sure.
absolutely. We're talking cream of the crop. We've got 2 more to get to. This one's interesting to me. Joel Embiid, our second to last player on the list here. A title, I think, is a very redemptive title for Joel Embiid. It justifies and maybe absolves much of the criticism that he has received. It eases the sting that all the injuries have had on him. That, thank goodness, I finally brought one to Philly. Like, this one's for you, Philly, for hanging in there. This is the process title. This is the fruits of the process right here. In terms of top 20, I don't know if I'm ever there with him. It's certainly in doubt, in my opinion, in spite of him beating out Jokic for that MVP award. A title would be a great thing to see. He's a passionate guy. I personally, I root for players to have success. So I'd love for him to have that moment. That's about as far as I'm willing to go with it. What are your thoughts on an Embiid title?
I like Embiid, I really do, but I just think at times very injury prone, very at times unmotivated in certain parts. And I just think where it's again, him winning a title, it's just one of those things. I mean, what if he, let's just hypothetically speaking, he wins the title, right? Paul George is there, like they win the title this year, right? But the year after, I don't know, he gets hurt. I mean, something happens, there's a new controversy. Like, I just don't see him, like, turning over a new leaf. I just don't see the championship being, like, a turning point to where he's just consistent the rest of his career. I just don't
Sure.
see that happening. So, to me, that prevents me from putting him in that top 20 discussion, even though you take a look, I mean, he's averaged almost 28 points, uh, throughout his entire career. And you can see that passion. He clearly wants to win the championship. But I do think there's just things in his way that is self-inflicted, and I just one title is not gonna. I agree with you, Matt. As much as I like Embiid, he's going to have to win multiple championships and just be a completely different player for me to put him in that class.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement there. Go ahead and let's talk about our final player
Yeah.
on the list. I think a fascinating one when you consider the door being wide open. Go for it.
Yeah, well, this is a very interesting player. Victor Wembanyama captivated the league last year. Lots of expectations. I think we could both agree that's lived up to the hype so far. I think the main question is what's going to happen with the Spurs team. How long has Pop coached this team for? He can't coach forever. So what happens there? Are free agents going to be prone to come there and play with Victor if he does win the championship? I mean, that is be unbelievable in such a difficult conference, as compared to a contemporary of his that got a lot of hype as a rookie, LeBron, right? A relatively easier Eastern Conference, and LeBron wasn't able to get it done. He had to leave and come back to win a title for Cleveland. So
Right.
I think for Victor, I would say he needs a hell of a lot more help for him to even have a shot at winning the title. But somehow, if he does, I mean, already at this young of age, and just the way I think compared to his contemporaries, um, his game is very unique and very different, which is rare to do in this era of the NBA. My fear is for a lot of big men, and this is where I have to fear Joel Embiid, is injuries. Big guys
Sure.
get hurt. So, and he's very skinny. And just, I hear this, I'm not a doctor, but from what I've heard from just different this analysts and people we've had on the show, I don't think he's into his adult body yet. So I'm just wondering with these few years here, if he can just, I don't think he needs to win the title, but if he can just remain consistent into his prime, I think he has a shot at being top 20. But, injuries, I'm in fear of that when I see a big guy. That always scares me. So to me, if he happens to win the title, not only this year, within the next couple of years, yeah, I think he won't have the resume to back it up. But I mean, how can he deny his potential if he wins the title this early in a highly competitive conference?
Great points. Something you highlighted that I want to emphasize, and I think is the main question mark for me, is not Wemby himself, but what the organization will do
Sure.
around him. Can San Antonio create the previous magic that they had with, French player and Argentinian player and
Hmm.
Tim Duncan? Can they create with another French player a solid core like that? I think based on the last 6 years, maybe in San Antonio, it's fair to doubt if they can do that and if they're up for the task.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting about that is if you see that, and if perception is, they're bringing in Chris Paul, but it's a much older NBA statesman, Chris Paul. Let's be honest. Now he can learn a lot from Chris Paul, and if Chris Paul can lob it up to him, that's going to be money
Yeah.
next year. But I think public perception is not going to be as harsh on Wemby if he leaves San Antonio. A lot of people, let's be honest, don't like San Antonio and don't have deep connection to that team. And I think would be understanding if he left that team, maybe even excited in a way, with that being essentially the small market team of the Texas teams. So it's going to be interesting to see if that plays out. I don't have any indications that he would at this point, but as you and I always discuss, this can change very quickly. It seems the way people are talking about Wemby and the way he performed in his rookie season seems like almost an inevitability that he would be a top 20 all-timer, but it's really, like you said, just too early to know that. There's too much, unfortunately, on the other side of things that can happen that would prevent that. So, of course, we're rooting to see that greatness out of him and excitement as his career develops, but we'll see if it goes. Once again, you guys, as we wrap up here, let us know your thoughts. What does a title do for these players on our list, and where do you see them fitting in the all-time rankings? You can give us a specific number now if you have it, if you're that into it, as I like to be, making all these lists and crazy deep dives into it, or just let us know if they crack the top 20. Justin, anything before we say our sweet goodbye?
No, just want to plug our deep archive. We've been active during this off season, so check that out either on your favorite podcasting app or on YouTube. And if you disagree with our comments, we're available via email, hoopsologypod@gmail.com.
Well said. And we just recorded a great interview
We did.
last night that we
Yep.
are really excited to drop for you guys. That will be coming out in the near future. Until then, for Justin Goodrum, I'm Matt Thomas. Thanks for hanging out with us, talking about NBA legacy ceilings for current players. Let us know your thoughts. And until next time, peace out.
See you later.